Byron Tarry, you started an organisation, NEXXT, a community, a movement to bring AI into AV, to spark some conversations, to get some innovation going. You've got a summit here at ISE 2026, Explore the AI in AV Summit. Welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Excited for hopefully what we can spark.
Let's see. What's the number one problem? What's the number one thing that people in AV don't really understand about AI?
Whether it's an understanding or not, I'm not sure. But I think we tend to get overwhelmed. There's this sort of the exhaustion of the infinite was something that I spoke about at the summit. That when we get bombarded with we're behind all the things we should be doing, all the potential, but we don't really then have any understanding of where to put that first and second step is where it gets challenging. And so I think trying to bring ourselves back to a fairly simple concept of where can we find friction, but that has a new capacity when you look at the capabilities of AI, of hyper-personalisation and so on, and say, is there a new business case to be able to unlock some of that friction? And across our industry, we know there's immense frictions in all sorts of places, be it internally in how we deliver or within customers in this new hybrid environment where we've actually created so much more friction than there even was in either an all in the office or all remote environment and so on. Where are those frictions, and is there something there that I could unlock? And that's where we sort of shift into the potential for entrepreneurialism, but ultimately the potential to really have transformational change.
I went to your summit and I attended your summit had 3 sections. I attended the leadership section and I thought it was very interesting. There's some great speakers and it reminded me that some of the things you need to achieve to deliver a successful project are similar to those you'd need in digital transformation in general. And I wondered whether AI is just a software project, where the key role is what the business analyst finds out about the process that needs to be automated. Is it that in whole, in part, or what's the story?
Well, look, software has always been a toolkit. We've just got the most humanistic software layer that we've ever had, which frankly should be exciting to us as an industry that you know, we've been an industry that has tied technology to the human condition so well. But I think that in the leadership moment, and why that first session was built around leadership, is leadership in itself is shifting. Leadership in the past was always about 30 years of experience and then being the strategist. And in fact, we had Richard Mulholland talk and saying that he actually questions this whole concept of strategy, and we need to rethink what strategy is, because in this moment, where that leadership is going to come from isn't built on 30 years of experience anymore. We're all in this new environment, and in fact, in many instances, it's across the organization. I have a concept of AI as a team sport. So really what we're trying to teach from a leadership standpoint is more about one of the key cores of leadership, which is how you engage broader teams, how you engage your organization to do a lot of the doing. And in fact, what this might be is less about executives being the strategist and more of them about being the coach or the captain and really finding ways to energize and empower their teams, because that's where you'll find the friction unlocks, or the friction identification, I guess, in the front lines. That's where you'll find the digital natives that can literally sit and code you something in an hour or two. We're in a scenario where years ago you might have spent $100,000. That was a very expensive experiment, but build it in 2 hours and you can throw it away and start again if you want to. So there's a very different leadership imperative in this moment, I guess, which is where we started on that leadership journey on the first day.
So your event was split into 3 sessions: leadership at the beginning, implementation, experiments at the end. What were you doing in the middle? What happened in the second of 3 sessions?
Yeah, so that was really, let's get past the executives and let's get a wider audience into the room. But let's recognize that particularly in our industry, but even more broadly, this concept of innovation is often not easily taught. I had a raise of hands in the room. Only 2 people in the room had any formal training in innovation, and those same 2 were the only ones that actually had any sort of an innovation strategy in their organization. And so the morning of the second session was really built around, there is best practice, and it's not Steve Jobs the savant coming up with brilliance. In fact, if you go look at the Google environment, Google X Labs or their Moonshot Labs and so on, there is a gold standard as to how to drive innovation out of a company and segregate that off even and to create these smaller environments. Julian Phillips talked about what SPL's done with XTG in hiving that off the main mothership and giving it the capacity to innovate and so on. So it was really about a recognition that if you understand those steps and if you can sort of shock the system into recognizing some processes and some feeling that I can take some next steps, then now we can actually hopefully be that catalyst to trigger some of that. But we need some of that skill set. So that was what the morning was about. And then, as you say, the afternoon was practical. Instead of people on stage, it was 15 minutes of guidance, and it was send tables off to go and hack, to go and see what they can build in 2.5 hours. And that was a remarkable process in its own right.
So what I'd ask about that is, who was most successful? Was it the table full of leaders, or was it someone else?
Well, that was what was so exciting about the output of it, because we had a table that literally was pretty much built up of executives and so on, and they had great discussion and were shooting for the moon in terms of an agent that can do everything and solve everything and so on around the meeting workflows.
So they came up with a great strategy.
But the PowerPoint presentation that they could report out on was a cut and paste from GPT into a PowerPoint, which frankly wasn't that convincing in its own right. The 2 teams that were in the sort of short list to win, and it was a hair between the 2 of them, actually built front ends to apps, built the pitch deck basically in terms of telling the story. And as I said to them, as an investor, I could have invested on what they built in 2 hours. And that was the exciting bit, because they weren't all execs. There were some strategists there, but there was some AI builder digital natives there and so on. So as the strategists are talking, they're typing into their computer and turning their computer around saying, is this what that could look like? And so it was really exciting to see when AI becomes that team sport of diversity, which, let's face it, that's our industry, right? It's about bringing diverse skill sets and people together into spaces and having them go at it. We sometimes lose perspective on that. That's really what we're there to do. And so when we did that with the diversity, add the partnership of AI to that, what they managed to do in 2.5 hours was amazing.
So what I'd say about that, it sounds like there are some real lessons about how you achieve speed to market and which teams are going to be most successful in delivering fast and reliable innovation.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that reflected more broadly. I mean, that middle management layer, the middle management is the layer that was brought in to manage the work around work. And as we see AI start to be able to strip some of that away, we're now seeing much more engagement potential, I guess, at the different layers of the organization and so on. I use an analogy around the greenhouse. How do we let the organization, empower the organization to cast seeds across the organization, find those frictions, not take on the mega project like the execs want to do, but find the little things, start to cut your teeth on that, let your front lines find those frictions, see which seeds actually start to sprout and grow, then move them into the greenhouse. That's where we can fertilize them and support them and graft them and do all sorts of things and so on, and get to the point where we really recognize that we've got the potential to operationalize that, and then get to what's actually the hardest part which is then getting it out back into the wild, into the adoption that overcoming the human friction to change, but it wasn't actually the technology friction anymore that was the problem. We'd unlocked that. Now the question was, did we have a strong enough imperative to be able to operationalize that and get the organization to buy back in, the entire organization to buy back into what we'd solved?
And some of what you said reminded me of Google's approach to innovation. Am I right?
Yeah, that's that Google X Labs proposition. Astro Teller, who runs that 95% of their projects fail. That fail fast, fail forward. They've got, Google has to be 5 nines operational excellence on the one side of the organization, and yet go break things, go tackle. Their imperative is not to tackle iterative change, 10% change. They want to tackle things that are 10 times change. As I said, there is methodology and structure to this and so on. In an industry that hasn't really been taught innovation, there are plenty of places to go to start to understand that. But that's that sort of energization that an executive needs to be doing and saying, my job's to actually empower my organization to have the flexibility. There's one last piece that I'll tie to that, and that's AI is saving time in a lot of instances. We're actually reinventing the premise of time within the workplace to some extent. We're seeing the big consulting organizations struggle because they used to charge by the hour, and now they've got to rethink. But to get that down to the narrowest, if I can find a way to save 3 hours for one of my frontline resources, maybe I should be giving an hour and a half or 2 hours of that back, not to just give them more work to do more doing and more efficiency, the 10% iterative change, but maybe I should be creating those greenhouse type methodologies to say, your job is to, this week is to take at least half of that time that you saved and go reinvest it in finding a transformational opportunity. And again, Google's a path for that, because they've been giving a day every month to their employees for years to say, go work on anything. It doesn't have to be associated with Google. Just go work on solving something, solving a problem. And chances are, even if it's nothing to do with us, that will be that fail forward learning proposition to say, now I can bring that back to what I do in my day job. And that's probably been a catalyst to unlock something that I can probably apply in a different capacity as well.
Well, I think what really interests me is that you've shown that you can experiment quickly using these diverse teams, and I think that's fantastic. And I really like the energy that you're bringing to this process of getting people excited and interested and actually doing something with AI and EV. So I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us and for energizing the conversation around AI.
You're welcome, but I guess that's exciting. We all like to get excited about innovation and transformation. The question is, how do we give something tangible to the catalyst to actually go do it? And I think that's what we're all looking for right now. Give me some steps to go and actually take part in that moment that we're all in, where there's so much opportunity, but sometimes we just need a bit of a poke and a bit of a prod and a bit of a pathway to progress, and that's what I hope we're managing to do.
Byron Tarry, thank you very much.